Welcome to Whiskey Cast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie. This is episode number 898 for September 15th, 2021, with highlights from our happy hour live webcast the other night at the American Whiskey Convention in Philadelphia. I want to thank everyone who joined us that night, those of you who watched as well as our guests on site, since we had a lot of technical problems with our live stream during the evening. Fortunately, we were recording an audio backup on site that made this podcast version possible. I owe a special thanks to Brianna Gillespie. She was our on-site producer, guest wrangler, security guard, and held everything together literally with gaffer tape. One other note, Wild Turkey's Bruce Russell joined us at the very end of the live show Friday night, but since that interview is in our regular episode of Whiskey Cast this week, we are not including it in this episode. And you may hear references to our attempts to get Steve Beam from Limestone Branch Distillery upstairs to our top floor location. He did make it after we ended the show, and we'll have that interview on an upcoming episode of Whiskey Cast. Thanks, as always, to our presenting sponsors of Whiskey Cast, Redbreast and Dewar's, along with our segment sponsors on the podcast each week, Oban, Writer's Tears, and Sagamore Spirit. Now, on with the show. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Gillespie, live at the American Whiskey Convention in Philadelphia. We are on the banks of the Delaware River at the Independence Seaport Museum. You might be able to hear the wind along the Delaware River and see some of the scenery behind me. When we go to our two-shot, I want to bring in our first guest right now, our pal Becky Harris from Catoctin Creek Distilling. And how are you tonight?
It's excellent to see you in real life.
Yeah, this is the first time in a year and a half we've seen each other.
Like three-dimensional humanity. It's amazing.
Now, you guys just completed the expansion, right?
Yes, absolutely. We just got our new equipment in. It felt like it took a really long all installed and up and going, but we're kind of entering our new relationship with our new still D run and our new fermenters. So it's pretty fun.
How did you come up with the name for the still?
It's because our second biggest still was called Ron, and that's because at the time he was big compared to our little still. And so we called him Ron, from Parks and Rec.
So you made up a second batch of the Guar rye.
Yes.
Did they do another invasion?
Yes, they came by. They've come by. We've been talking to them. We haven't seen them recently since the second one. But they have been, they're great partners. We're really excited to kind of look into what we can do to kind of make future releases, even smoother. This one was it was all very much of the ethos of let's make this work, make it happen, from the bar tops that were, hand done by an artisan in I believe, California. He was casting them and setting them into the wood bar tops. I think that was a little problematic because they turned out to be very fragile. So we're working on trying to get some little more sturdier bar tops so that they're majestic visages are are appropriately sturdy.
Yeah, you don't want those guys going on the warpath,
That's right.
do you? What's next? Now that you've got the still up and running, what do you work on next?
Wow, that's a great thought. The biggest thing is just trying to get to where we anticipate we're going to be in the next couple of years. As a distiller, you have to think a couple of years ahead minimum. And, with the growth path that we are hoping for, we have to get making this whiskey. So, that's one of the reasons why I had a lot of anxiety about, kind of that time down, because you kept thinking tick-tock, that's time. And so, it's going to be the growing pains of how do we, handle all this? How do we move that many barrels? It's going to be twice as much as we did before. And so that's going to change everything.
And you have to have warehouse space to store those now too, right?
We have the warehouse space. We have one warehouse is getting fairly full. The second bay is available, but we're going to definitely be filling up, within the next year. So, yes, that's going to be another thing to think about. But it's definitely been a year, juggling the work that, I'm doing distilling for Catoctin Creek with the, kind of the initiatives that I've been doing with the American Craft Spirits Association has really made things complicated. And, I feel like a duck, a lot of activity going on beneath the surface and paddling ahead. But we have the new Step Up Foundation that was...
Yeah, tell me about this, because the release on this just came out this week.
Yes, we are so excited. We've been working on this for just a bit over 2 years. One of the things that came up at the American Craft Spirits Association was our immediate past president, Chris Montana, is an African-American guy, and he was like pretty much the only guy in the room when he first came to his first convention. And he really kind of said, as an organization, we need to change that. And so we came up with the idea of creating an internship project. And as we started to build it had to be a separate 501c3 so that we could raise money for it. But what I'm incredibly excited about is that it is really focused on bringing underrepresented folks in who are interested in a career in the spirits industry. They will spend a full year on a paid internship. They will spend about 12 weeks each at 3 different distilleries of different sizes, kind of with different, specialties, and then 1 12-week period at a distributorship. And that's really going to give them the kind of holistic picture of the industry that is really necessary. Our goal for our interns is they come out and they're not the kind of people that you want to hire and train from, the bottom level. These are knowledgeable people that are going to know an awful lot and really add to any company's, bottom line. And if they're more entrepreneurial folks, we're going to, be giving them counseling as far as coaching, connecting them with mentors across the industry. We are just so excited about this. I am super excited, and I'm super nervous because now it's finally real. And come January, we're actually going to be sending our first 2 interns out to, we're going to be evaluating and selecting the distilleries that will host them, the mentors that will partner with them, and then the interns are going to go out starting in January to really kind of see what, launch this program and change the face of the industry.
If someone wants to get involved in this, how do they apply?
I would check out, we are at Step Up Internship on Instagram, and I believe it's stepupfoundation.org. So that's where you can check us out on the internet, or you can reach out to me on either Instagram, Beckhar67. You can reach out to me directly if you have questions about it and want to know a little more before jumping in. And I'd be happy to touch base with anybody who's interested in kind of helping us change the industry.
All right, Becky, thank you for joining us, being our first guest right now on
Absolutely.
And putting up with the delays while you were sitting here watching us.
I'm enjoying the beautiful view.
Yeah, the wind is nice. It feels nice because we can be out here, and technically we're supposed to be masked, but since we're doing a broadcast, there is an exception so that we can do this safely, and with the wind and everything, we're doing it. Now, I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll let you get back to your booth because it is 5:30 and the VIP hour begins right now. So,
thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Becky. And once again, Becky Harris from Catoctin Creek. We will have more guests coming in throughout the night. Not quite sure who we're going to pull in. We know who's supposed to be here, and we will see who we can drag in, as it were. But right now, I have to talk about something that's a bit sad. Those of you in the bourbon world, and since we are here at the American Whiskey Convention tonight, we need to acknowledge the passing of Stephen Thompson. Stephen was the longtime distiller and guru for craft distillers around Kentucky. He was an executive at Brown-Forman for many, many years. And after he retired, he decided to help other people fulfill their dreams. So he opened up Kentucky Artisan Distilling in Crestwood, Kentucky, just east of Louisville. And there he started making whiskey for other people to their recipes and to help them fulfill their dreams and some of his own as well. He tragically died this past Monday at his lake house in Michigan in a rather sudden accident at the age of 77. One of the people that Steve Thompson worked with over the years was Trey Zeller of Jefferson's Bourbon, and I had the chance to talk with Trey earlier today about Steve Thompson's legacy.
Steve was one of the most unique, most memorable, indelible people that I've ever met. And I'm not alone in this. I kind of looked at him like a father figure. And there was a number of people that I've talked to this week that felt like that. And, you know, he posted some pictures on Monday from his new lake house up in Michigan. And he looked like a pig in shit. He was doing exactly what he wanted to be doing, surrounded by friends and family. And I couldn't, you know, that's the way he would want to go out. So, so lucky to work with him. Every day that we got together, he had a perpetual smile on his face and a twinkle in his eye. He loved to stir the pot and push buttons, and his mind was always reeling. You know, I hope that I can live my life like that until I'm his age and still have just the fire in his belly. And such a great guy and somebody that I've learned so much from.
Give me a sense of what he means to the bourbon industry, because Kentucky Artisan was one of the first craft distillers or small-scale distilleries that just popped up.
And you know what? He did it for all the right reasons. You know, his legacy is unbelievable. And I've heard from so many people this week and over the years, from Hugh Blind, that he ran production up there and he was president of Brown-Forman, ran all their distilleries there. His wealth of stories is, like all the great old guys, that there's not many left that, really cut their teeth in a different era. But, as he told me, he tried to retire a couple times and he wasn't good at it. He put Kentucky Artisan Distillery together as a hobby. He was just going to go ahead and distill some product. And then he wanted to distill other people's dreams. And he figured, I could bring their dreams to life. And he saw what a pain in the butt that was. And he turned it into a hell of a business. He's just in the last couple of weeks ordered a new bottling line, ordered twice the amount of fermenters and cookers so he could double production. He was totally reinvigorated about the prospect of getting his own brand, Whiskey Row, really off, which has grown to be a substantial brand. I think he is going to do about 20,000 six-bottle cases this year with it. So he was really excited about that. Actually, I was helping him on a new label that he was going to come out with called SF Thompson. And we're going to make a couple labels up for a memorial service that we're going to have and celebrate him. But, he helped everybody that asked for his help, and he would tell them exactly what he thought. If he thought you had a dumb idea, he'd say, why the hell do you want to do that? And he didn't do it in a condescending way. He did it in a way that helped people, one, save some of the money that they would lose and to help them. And he would do it freely and not ask for any compensation, just because he loved it. And at 79, the only reason he was still doing it is that he loved the camaraderie and just wanted to be in the game.
And he's one of these guys that really deserved to be in the Bourbon Hall of Fame a long time ago. He
does. As a matter of fact, I talked to Campbell Brown about this 2 days ago, who I know reached out for Eric and said they were going to get that ball rolling. And I guess there's not going to be a Hall of Fame this year because of COVID. So hopefully, and I feel awful that I didn't try to make this happen while he was still around. But if anybody's deserving, he certainly is. And, so, as all the craft distilleries came about, there were a lot of people that just didn't have the practical knowledge. And he had it, and he was more than happy to share that with anybody that wanted that advice.
Once again, that's Trey Zeller of Jefferson's Bourbon talking about his longtime friend Steve Thompson, who passed away this week. Comment that came in from H. Hemphill. Steven sounds like the Jim McEwen of bourbon. Rest in peace. Amen to that. Steve was one of the guys that I always wanted to get on Whiskey Cast, but never was quite able to. And always managed to drive past Kentucky Artisan, but never quite got out there. I am told that there are succession plans in place for keeping the distillery going. Nothing that anybody's ready to discuss yet. The funeral for Steve, I believe, is this coming Monday. But in due time, we will find out what the plans are for Kentucky Artisan Distillery, which is the home of Jefferson's Bourbon. And we will hear more from Trey Zeller on next week's episode of Whiskey Cast. Want to bring in another live guest right now, Chad Solomon from Cooper Spirits right here in Philadelphia. How are you tonight?
Doing great. It's phenomenal to be here in Philadelphia, here on the Delaware, and join you, Mark.
Tell us about Cooper Spirits, which was the creation of the late, great Rob Cooper.
That is correct. It was founded in 2006, and in its first release was Saint Germain, which was released in April of 2007 and went on to really just kind of meteoric success.
And that was Rob's creation, and then he passed several years ago, and the family is continuing that. You're also familiar with, responsible for Lock, Stock, and Barrel,
that
among
is
other
correct.
things. And there's a brand new 20-year-old edition out of Lock, Stock, and Barrel. But tell us about that one and then about the new one that's coming.
Okay, so Lock, Stock, and Barrel. Well, so Rob was really inspired by the rye whiskey renaissance that he saw. It was happening in New York in the mid to late aughts, and decided that he, having family roots here in Pennsylvania, and he having a passion for rye whiskey, he wanted to get into the independent bottling game and went out and started searching for interesting rye. And he hit upon was kind of first to the plate at ADL in Calgary, Alberta, and started buying lots of
and
whiskey.
Let's explain. ADL is Alberta Distillers. We've
Correct.
talked with the folks from there before, and they make whiskey for a whole bunch of other folks besides the Beam Suntory family too. So
correct. Alberta Premium would be their flagship Canadian whiskey. In particular, though, Rob bought their 100% mash bill rye that was used as flavoring juice. What's unique about that whiskey is that it's like I mentioned, 100% rye mash bill, but there's no malting involved. They use a proprietary koji process that creates enzymes to convert the starches in the rye so they're more fermentable. It's double distilled in copper pot stills. And then on the barrels, another kind of unique quality to them is that they're not toasted. They're steamed to shape the barrel and then charred to a 3.5. They're then age air in that cold climate in there in Calgary. What Rob's intention was by buying that lot was to release it on its own, but in drops every so often, and to let it ride up and see how it went, because he thought it had potential for some extra long aging. And that's what we've continued on with. And so the first release was a 13-year in 2014. Since then, there's been a 16-year expression, an 18-year, and then the 20-year, which actually came out last year. There's more coming to market here before the end of the year. And it's just phenomenally interesting juice. Bottled at 56% ABV, 112 proof. And if you've tasted the whiskeys along the way, it really is this amazing kind of progression and seeing, the influence of oxidation and esterification there in the barrel in cold climate, but very, very mild barrel influence given those unique factors that I mentioned.
The 21 is coming out. What can you tell us ahead of time?
Once again, it's coming from the same lot. So that will have been it's distilled in May of 1999. So it's another little unique, fact that it's some of the last 20th century juice.
Yeah.
There's not that much, left, but I would say that, these are just it's an aroma bomb. This time around, you've got, there's always been this kind of caramel toffee. It's now kind of emerged into treacle. There's an ever so slight hint of melon in the mid palate that's dried out or kind of really started to fade, and just a baking spice bomb that's really, really gorgeous, and then this just incredibly long dry down that is incredibly chewable viscosity. It really is a delightful whiskey.
Can't wait to try it. Now you also have some canned cocktails out too, right?
We
Rock
did.
and Ryes, yeah.
We did, and so that was really Rob's first foray into, first release into the rye space, which was reviving the historical category of rock and rye, which throughout the 20th century had really declined in quality. And so he created Slow and Low, which was released initially in 2011. And the idea was to modernize the category of rock and rye, but modernize it through the lens of a bottled rye whiskey old-fashioned. And on an elemental level, that's exactly what it is. Straight rye whiskey aged 2 to 3 years, a pinch of rock candy with the additions of raw honey, Angostura bitters, and a maceration of navel orange peel, and bottled at a muscular 42% ABV. And then at the same time that he went to bottle it, he had the idea for the cans. He was the first to innovate the 100-milliliter can, and it took 4 years. That was finally released in August of 2016. And so same juice. And then a little news I can share with your listeners. We are releasing shortly Slow and Low Coffee Old Fashioned, a collaboration with Intelligentsia Coffee. It's a coffee old fashioned, loosely inspired by the classic New Orleans after dinner drink, Café Brûlot.
Wow, that sounds interesting. Big combination there between the rye, the coffee, a little of everything. How hard was it to actually get those things to work together?
Well, I mean, if you look at Café Brûlot, which is a difference between ours and, I say lightly or loosely based, is that's a cognac or a brandy based drink that with the addition of a curacao, orange liqueur, and then that's lit on fire, and a spiraled orange peel that's clove studded is kind of basted with that flaming alcohol to aromatize that. There's also some sugar in the base, and then hot coffee is added for a hot serve. So we knew that, citrus, baking spice, coffee, spirit worked. And it was, part of my job to make those things, delicious and balanced. And I think we achieved that.
Where will these be available, and where can people find the other Cooper Spirits whiskeys?
So you can go to drinkslowandlow.com, find us, enter your zip code, and phenomenal algorithm tells us everywhere. With the Hochstadter's Vatted Rye, which we haven't discussed, and Lock, Stock, and Barrel, those items are going to be allocated. We are pretty widely available, that being said, in terms of most major markets, are definitely the major markets, and I would advise just going to your specialty retailer and asking for us.
All right. Chad, thank you for joining us. I appreciate your time tonight.
Cheers.
Chad Solomon from Cooper Spirits, and you find them on the web at cooperspirits.com, right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks, Chad. We appreciate your time tonight. We'll let you get back to your stand since folks are starting to file in right now. American whiskey has really had a lot of growth in the last few years, and one of the companies that really has jumped into this wholeheartedly were the folks at Pernod Ricard, because you may remember that a few years ago they made what some people might term a big mistake when they sold Wild Turkey to Campari. At the time, they needed that money to help fund the purchase of Absolute Vodka. But a few years later, they wound up spending money to get back into the whiskey business. They started off buying Smooth Ambler in West Virginia. Then over the last couple of years, they took on Firestone and Robertson in Fort Worth, Texas, Rabbit Hole Distilling in Louisville, and about a year and a half ago, Pernod Ricard's parent company, the parent company in Paris, acquired Castle Brands. Those other acquisitions were done through the New Brand Ventures unit for Pernod Ricard USA in New York. But the parent company in Paris wound up buying Castle Brands, which brought in Gosling's rum, Jefferson's bourbon, and that was the key thing in the deal, along with Napog Castle Irish whiskey. And they've made a real serious effort to get back into the whiskey business in America. And I talked with Craig Johnson of the marketing department at Pernod Ricard USA, and this is really sort of just the start for them.
Growth runways in this industry can last for a long time, and bourbon growth has been going on for many years now, but we do expect it to continue. We expect the premiumization of the category to continue. And, most importantly, we know that consumers are enjoying American whiskeys as part of their portfolio in many different occasions. And that's what makes, the category special, is it can be, as simple as having a whiskey at night to, help end your day, or it can be in a really high-end mixology bar, in cocktails. And, it can be spanned from outdoor, indoor, all the occasions that people drink bourbon in shows that there is a lot of runway for growth to continue. And we do think our brands and our premium positions allow us to take advantage of Pernod Ricard's global strength and to help build these brands. It's going to be a long road, but you see premium bourbon growing around the world, and that provides us with a lot of optimism.
Is that where you see the big growth factor coming around the world, or in the domestic market as more people internationally discover bourbon and American whiskeys?
I think we'll have growth in both areas, but, we're focused right now really on growth in the domestic market, and then, rolling it out with measured pace in other markets.
Once again, that's Craig Johnson from Pernod Ricard USA on the company's investments into the American whiskey market. Joining me now, we've talked a lot at times about how whiskey can put you into an altered state, but there's actually the Altered State Distillery. Gavin, take a step in closer here so that you're in the camera shot. Okay. From Erie, Pennsylvania, Gavin Moss from Altered State Distillery. Tell us about your whiskeys, and tell us about the distillery, first of all.
Yeah. So we opened in 2019. We opened with a 500-gallon still system. It was a hybrid column, found very shortly into our first year. We needed a pot still to join it, and purchased a 500-gallon pot still. We're capable of doing 2 barrels in 8 days. We're pretty proud that we've been able to bring up our production level in the past 2 years. And it was we opened for about 4 months. The traction was beautiful. The whiskeys we built. Prior to us opening in 2017, we worked with a company called Conneaut Cellars, and they also have a distillery, Conneaut Lake Distillery. And we spent a lot of time with Joel and them down there learning how to upscale what we were doing out on our farm, and took it to the commercial level. Thankfully for them, we were able to have aged product by the time we opened. We focused on single malts and rye, and purchased our grains regionally, grew to country malt, a big group out of Canada, and we started importing our grains from Islay Island, Scotland, in our peat smoked malted barleys that we imported, and started winning awards. ADI was blessed to give us the awards we won with them. Went over to the micro distillery awards as well. Won triple golds, and then the ACSA, we just won bronzes and silvers for all of our whiskeys. So we're very proud of what we're building. Obviously, being a juvenile distillery, we got a long way to go. We have a lot of product no one's tried yet. And we build what we call complex whiskeys. We basically take a straight bourbon, which we source, and we blend it with single malts, our single malts. So we take our year and a half, 2 years sometimes, single malts at this point, and we blend them. And we're able to create what we call complex whiskeys. A lot of the smokiness from the single malt, and then the smooth, sweet finish of the bourbon. And that's where we based our core lines in the beginning. We do a malted rye, and we blend a malted rye with a straight rye, creates a much more sweeter palate than the bitter and astringent, sharp palate, spicy palate they like to use. And it really smoothed it out. We found our biggest seller is our Red Tail Rye. So that's a quick overhaul of what we are, where we are in Erie, Pennsylvania. We're in
right up near the border with New York, right?
Yep. Ohio one side, New York on the other. Looking at certainly expanding based on our regional. But we're real happy and real excited to be here today. One of our biggest interests has been the Seed Spark Project, being a part of the Rosen Rye, soon to be renamed Keystone Rye, hopefully. But we're real excited. We've had the products. We've been talking with those guys. Mr. McDonald has been wonderful to us. We've been buying their Bloody Butcher corn. We also have a farm regionally up north where we brought back a seed. It's a Civil War corn, blue dent corn, Ohio blue dent. Put it in the ground, it grew seed stock. 3 years later, we're harvesting about 10,000 pounds this year, and we will have pretty mediocre double digits on the barrels at this point. So, and that's a bourbon that no one's tried yet. So,
what prompted you guys to get into the distillery business in the first place?
A lot of playing with it for years. My partner Aaron Hetz, he had a farm where we were playing with mashes. I started in the beer home brewing and building mashes, understanding mash science. He was on the distillery side, and we were chatting and started building our single malt. And I had 2 carboys explode in my bathtub. We made it a little too acidic by using too much specialty grain in our first batch, and a lot of funny memories. But as it was going, we wanted to take this passion of building this spirit we felt was a great spirit, but how do we come to the market with something different? That spawned the concepts of the single malt bourbon blends. That's also spawning our grain bills and being interested in the Rosen Rye and trying to start using, we use a lot of European grains as well, not just the Islay Island smoke malted barley, but we're using German white rye. We use their Belgian wheats. We use just a variation of grains. We also use a lot of regional grains. And definitely excited to get into the rye program. So that's we just started doing it, started building a business plan, and found love for it. And all of a sudden, here we are, 4 years later.
But what were you doing before?
I was a process engineering sales rep. So I went from the mechanical engineering world for a machine builder, left them, went to work for this company for 2 years. And they were bought by Crohn's. And in the brewery world, distillery world, Crohn's is the big guys on the block. And they pretty much let me go. When they came in, they didn't need 4 sales reps anymore. I found myself unemployed. And I had already been working with my partner, already worked on the business plan, had more reason to launch it at that point. And it's been a wonderful experience ever since. So
working for yourself can be fun, can't it?
Yes, it is. Entrepreneurship, right? People seem to think of that as this, they must be doing really well. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And we're real proud of what we're doing up there. So,
where'd the name Altered State Distillery come from?
My partner and I, we're odd ducks a little bit. We always found fun in
you sort of have to be to get into this business, don't you?
Absolutely. The more people I meet, I thought, I guess we're all kind of birds of a feather in this business. It fell along the lines of something creative. We were big into music. Our labels and logos were built by a gentleman named John Vogel, who's a big artist in the music industry for the Grateful Dead, String Cheese Incident, and a bunch of others. But Altered State fit a very fun concept to us, not only through the bottle designs, but through the products. We're altering the state of everything we do, from grains to a spirit. It just seemed to blend well with our personalities and actually what we're doing physically. So, well,
where can people find your whiskeys, and where are you guys on the web?
So we're at www.alteredstatedistillery.com. Our products are regionally at the moment. We're growing into Ligonier County, which is going to we're going to have a satellite down there, which is just south of Allegheny County, and we're growing down the I-79 corridor. Currently, most of our spirits are only available in the state stores regionally, but you can order them into other state stores throughout the state.
And let's explain the I-79 corridor. Basically, it runs from Pittsburgh south down to Morgantown, West Virginia, and goes down that way. So you're basically western Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh area, and then up towards Ohio and the Toledo area. I'm sorry, the sort of east of Cleveland, right?
Yes, correct. Yep. We're looking to grow into New York, only because we have so many businesses up there that want to carry our products. And then Ohio, I'm not really interested in so much at the moment, but we have a lot to do in the state of Pennsylvania before we get too grandiose in that one.
And you're dealing with the control state too, right?
Yes, correct. We found the state stores are great. The one thing we love working with the state stores is that anybody can buy our spirits and have them shipped to their local state stores too. So it's helping the growth into Ligonier. We have sales groups that are going to start selling for us in Allegheny County and then east on 80 towards Philadelphia, we hope. So we're trying to grow it.
We hope you get over to New Jersey sometime. We'd love to try your stuff.
I would love it.
Tor Christensen, who has a distillery in Norway, just commented on here, entrepreneurship is the hardest of businesses. Much respect to you. So,
thank you. It's a humbling world to be in for sure.
Well, thank you again, Chad, and good luck to you. And
thank you so much.
We'll try your stuff, and let me take that microphone from you. Okay. And you want to go ahead and sneak back in here? We have a mask that was left behind, and obviously you got to keep track of the masks right now. So I want to read a few of the comments right now, and some of you guys are doing stuff in Dutch, and I can't read Dutch. Come on, guys. You guys probably speak Dutch better than... I can't speak Dutch at all, so we will try this here. But let's go through a couple things. Our pal Chris down in Brisbane, Australia, says hi from down under, and his wife Lil is here with him, and hi to both of you. Sorry we're not going to see you this coming weekend at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. Chris and Lil usually make the trip up north each year, up to this part of the world to attend the Bourbon Festival, but obviously that's not going to happen this year. Let's see other comments right now. Champel, the parent company in France, that would be Pernod Ricard. Little Spirits Company, I think they're the number 2 in the spirits company behind Diageo worldwide. Pernod Ricard USA is their U.S. division. The big company, you can find it on the web, Pernod-Ricard.com. I think their American depository receipts are sold on the New York Stock Exchange. I know they're available on the Paris Bourse as far as stock markets go. Let's look at a few of the other comments right now that sort of came in here. We had some comments about the weather in Calgary. We were having that discussion. Let's see here. Dave Kuhn says the quality of the live signal is improved by 100%. I think I'm glad that's the case because I haven't seen it cut out in just a little while. And our pal Tabitha, smart ass that she is, decided to post in Japanese from London. Not even going to try that one. Laddie Whiskey Nerd, any news in the American Single Malt Society and the legislation on U.S. single malts making it into law? Nothing yet. It was still out for proposals, but the comment period, I believe, has ended. And now basically it's a case of waiting for the bureaucracy. And with COVID, that might take a while. But at some point, maybe by the end of the year, more than likely mid-2022, we might have a decision on from the TTB on whether to create that category for single malt whiskeys. I have a producer off camera who's rapidly trying to pull in guests for me and is trying to see who she can find right now. So we're going to vamp for just a couple of minutes here. Curious as to why Cooper Spirits has Saint-Germain on their website. Yeah, they originally developed that one. That was one of their projects. You're thinking of, the Saint-Germain. That was one of the, I believe they were involved in the development of that one and the marketing for it. I think I'm whiffing on that one because once we get into the liqueurs and things like that, it sort of gets off into my area. And Laddie and our friends in Europe saying, sorry, they'll switch to English, and those comments were not meant for international eyes. Well, sorry about that, guys. Once again, we are at the American Whiskey Convention. You can find them on the web, AmericanWhiskeyConvention.com. And one of the things this does, Chad mentioned the Rose and Rye Project. It benefits the Delaware Valley Fields Foundation, which works with local farmers to try to improve the quality of the grain being grown, not just for food use, but also for spirits, for distilling, for brewing, and for all sorts of uses, and to really create markets for the spirit here. Normally this is held in April each year. What we're celebrating tonight is the festival that would have been held at this location in April of last year, but COVID. And it was postponed until last fall, didn't work out, and they wound up holding it this weekend. We are working under some serious masking orders from the city of Philadelphia. Because I'm out on the porch, we're allowed to be unmasked right now. And come on in. This is one, and I'm going to apologize because I'm not recognizing you first.
Robert Ferrara.
Robert,
nice to meet you.
Grab the microphone. Robert Ferrara, tell us about where you're from and take a step in on here.
Yeah, of course. Robert Ferrara. I work for Pernod Ricard. I'm one of the whiskey brand ambassadors.
Okay.
I do all the education for their single malt Scotch portfolio, their blended Scotch portfolio, single pot still Irish whiskey portfolio. And then
so you're the Redbreast guy then.
Redbreast guy.
You're out of place tonight at the American Whiskey Convention, except for the all the bourbons. And we just heard from Craig Johnston about the expansion in the bourbon business around here.
Yeah. Tonight we have Jefferson's and Smooth Ambler.
And we've talked briefly about Jefferson's. We heard from Trey Zeller earlier talking about the late Steve Thompson, who passed this week. But I know Jefferson's has a bunch of new whiskeys coming out over the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends which state people are based in. We recently released the Rye finished in cognac cask, which is phenomenal. We have Ocean's Rye coming out very soon.
And an Ocean's Wheated, too, right?
Yep, Ocean's Wheated. And then we have the Ocean's Cask Strength coming back out pretty soon. Some of our limited releases are going to start popping back up. Previously when it was with Castle Brands and it turned over with Pernod Ricard, we had to build some stock back up. So you see Pritchard Hill back out pretty soon. You see the old rum cask out pretty soon, which is one of my personal favorites. Yep. Rum cask finished bourbon, phenomenal. Yep. And then we have Smooth Ambler, which we just released the Contradiction Rye recently.
Again.
Yep.
Love Contradiction. That's a good one. I'm a big fan of the Contradiction.
Well, make sure you come over and have a little sip.
I'm sort of tied up over here for now, but I will at some point. So tell me about this growth. When you're out trying to convince people that craft whiskeys and craft bourbons are worth tasting, how hard is it for you to push this?
It's actually not hard at all, because I've been in the hospitality business since the late 90s, early 2000s, being a bartender. So I already was dealing with consumers and trade. And I've seen it go from back bars full of clear spirits to, single malt Scotch, and then Irish whiskey boom, thanks to Jameson and some of the other blended Irish whiskeys. Now we see the popularity of Redbreast and stuff. But the American whiskey is just taking off, right? Also with cocktails, I think, you have bars and restaurants that have old fashions on their menus. And I don't mean just like, the craft cocktail bars. I mean, your chains, national chains have old fashions on the menu. You have younger men and women now drinking whiskey, which is great. I just think, people also don't want to be BS'd. They want, where's it from?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, Smooth Ambler, we're very transparent about Old Scout and Contradiction. We can't really tell you where the distilleries are because of contractual purposes, but we're saying it's 100% sourced from Indiana. I mean, you can pretty much.
There's a little small distillery,
very small,
sort of west of Cincinnati, along the Ohio River. The town shares a name with a really famous place in Kentucky for whiskey. We sort of can figure that out. Exactly. But they make good juice.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
But I think people have access to, they have their computers, their tablets, their phones, where they can Google this stuff. So, they can see right through you if you're BSing them. So I think, just knowing your brands, knowing the products, and just not lying to the consumer, I think it's really the best advice I can give to anybody out there listening. Because people aren't as dumb as you think they are.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, podcasts like yours, I listen to you all the time, believe it or
Thank
not.
you.
So I turned around the corner, I heard your voice, I was like, oh, I know him. But yeah,
Thank you.
I think the whiskey world is thriving. The one thing I don't like about it, and this is my personal opinion, is that a lot of the age statements have gone away.
Yeah.
Because we can't produce it fast enough. But speaking to other distillers, for instance, like Alan Winchester from Glenlivet,
yep.
his whole thing is, and him and Sandy, the blender, and Shivas Brothers, their whole thing is, not having an age statement on a bottle actually gives them more free range.
Yeah.
Because when you have an age statement, you're handcuffed, right? Whether it's 6, 7, 8, 12, whatever it is, that's the youngest whiskey in the bottle. So you have to put that in there. But what if you have a really good whiskey that's 2 years younger? Now you can't use it. So having these non-age statements is actually better for them because they're going after that flavor profile. And it tends to make the whiskey a little bit cheaper for us. Yeah. Right? So, but I do love seeing, some bourbons coming back with some old age statements. I mean, I remember before we acquired Jefferson's, seeing the old presidentials.
Yeah, the 25.
Yeah, I mean, you can't.
I've still got some of that at home.
I got a couple stashed away, but good luck finding those, right?
Yeah.
That's why people go nuts over a lot of these older age statements. But I wish there was a little bit more. Hopefully it happens with people's stock, but we'll see what happens.
All right, Robert, hey, thank you for coming by. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And we'll set that microphone down. Great question here from our pal Tor in Norway. How does it feel to actually be at a physical festival? It feels good. I got to admit, I haven't been inside yet. I've been outside since the doors opened, setting up out here, and it is unusual to actually be around people. This is the first time I have been at a whiskey event since Dramfest in March of 2020 in Christchurch, New Zealand. And this is the first time I've been out here. So, it feels good. I'm still a little nervous about being inside, and if I were inside, I would be masked up like you would not believe, just because I don't want to lose my sense of smell or taste to COVID. Even though I'm fully vaccinated, the breakthrough infections do occur. And so it's just a case of, I've missed this. I have missed this incredibly. Oh, I see trouble coming. I see trouble coming. Oh, the crap has hit the fan. Come on, Lisa. Oh, bless you. Our pal Lisa Wicker from Widow Jane. Grab the microphone here.
Okay.
And you can stand right there
right.
Because the camera is right there.
Oh, all right.
Stand in front of the stool here.
Okay.
Stand in front of the stool here so we can see you.
I will do that.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
First time I've seen you in a year and a half, at least.
I know it. Maybe going on 2 years.
Yeah, sometime probably fall 2019.
Yeah.
How you been?
Good. How have you been?
Going crazy.
Okay, I'm going to try it since we're socially distant.
And it's outside and the wind is blowing.
Yes. Yeah.
So what's going on at the distillery these days?
Oh my gosh, we are so busy. We're so insanely busy. That and trying to get on top of the same exact story of every single other distillery in the country, on top of logistics and truck drivers and bottles and...
Yeah, tell me about this. Are you having trouble getting what you need?
We're doing okay, but it's taking a lot of extra time to get what we need when we need it. You know, trucks don't want to show up, and or things like trucks get stuck because they'll be up in Queens and then there's nobody to unload them there, so they sit there all day because they can't get unloaded to come get us. So there's all kinds of insane logistics right now.
Okay, I'm hoping I didn't step on a cable or something here because the signal froze yet again. So we will keep going here, and let me know if you're seeing us again because it looks like we're still live. Let's talk about this. This is Lucky 13, your new whiskey.
Yes.
And tell me about this, because this came out of the private barrel program originally, right?
It did. It was first our 12-year-old. Then all of it turned 13. Lucky 13 came out of a name where we were getting some of the barrels under proof. It was delicious whiskey. We didn't know what to do with it. I said something to my boss about calling it Unlucky 13 because it's dark and it's Widow Jane. He's like, Lisa, we're not calling anything unlucky. We're going to call it Lucky 13. And then because of the demand for the product and trying to get it out across the country, and I love blending, right? So we decided to make it a blend. And so it's also blended across 3 states. We've had such great success with the vaults, and we've had such great success with the 10-year program. And I think we're closing in on 500 batches of the 5-barrel small batch for 10-year. And so Lucky 13 was kind of a natural progression out of those 2 products because we had a lot of juice in that middle range. From all 3 states.
Let's explain how this works, because we know that when whiskey falls below 40%, technically you're not supposed to bottle it as whiskey, right, but you can blend it with stronger stuff, right?
You know what? I don't even know the rules on that. We don't have anything that low. If I find something that low, I'm certainly... When I say that, I mean it was not the proof that was on our label for... So
okay.
for the 12-year-old program.
And our pal Chris in Australia says
Hey,
they'll be
Chris.
having some of his older bottle of Widow Jane 10 tonight.
Oh, awesome.
And Chris is turning 50 years old.
Oh, happy
And it's
birthday,
already
Chris.
Saturday morning in Australia, so his celebration is pretty much getting underway
Oh, that's
as,
awesome.
or as we speak right
Well, Chris,
now.
I didn't know it was your birthday, but we did have a little breakfast scotch at work this morning. It was one of those days.
Oh, yeah.
Happy
and
birthday.
Our pal Bill Ricker says Widow Jane 13, perfect for Halloween.
Awesome. I love that.
And people say the stream is back, and Chris says to say hello also.
Hey,
and
Chris.
So what else are you working on right now? What's next after Lucky 13?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm working across all sorts of little projects here and there because we have such an amazing front line with Widow Jane and Thompson and Surrey. We're just right now trying to keep up. And with everything that's happening in the world right now, we keep every month we bottle more than we did the month before, and it's a crazy good ride right now.
Now, you're still splitting your time between Bardstown and New York, right?
Correct. Mostly in New York these days, but yes, I was just back in Kentucky this last week. I had some bourbon women, 3 days with bourbon women, and then I was doing a little bit of distilling again back in Kentucky. So,
And you distill at, I think, Bardstown Bourbon?
No, Castle and Key.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and
okay.
Yeah, and Points Unknown.
Tell me how the symposium went, because we had the bourbon women on. We had Peggy and Maggie and Heather on.
Yes, and you drank the vaults.
Yes, we drank the vaults a couple weeks ago, and I was just curious to see if anybody wound up having to get bailed out of jail.
No comment. We did have a very good time at Peggy's house.
Yeah, because she said she was having you over for dinner, but
Yes.
she sort of broke the news on it because she
Yes.
wasn't going to tell anybody until hand.
Yes, and the first night was at Ted Huber's house, or Ted Huber's business, right? And I used to distill there, and I didn't let them know I was coming, so we had an amazing night that night. Christian, one of his sons, pulled some of the whiskey that I'd laid down there, and that was remarkable fun. And
Security didn't stop you at the gate?
Thank God there was a bus. Let's just say that.
I'm kidding. I'm
Yes.
kidding.
Anybody that's ever done a run around with Ted Huber in a warehouse, yeah.
I would love to do that one of these days.
You need to do that.
I need to do that.
Yes. Yeah, they're
But-
laying down some remarkable whiskey.
Yeah, they've made some really good stuff over the years.
Yes.
Especially, and even since you left, they made some good stuff too.
Absolutely. Oh, no, they had a solid program. Yeah, I was just a blip on the screen. Yeah.
So let's talk about, I don't think we've talked about this in a while, but you made the switch from winemaking into distilling.
Yes.
And that's an unusual path. Most people go from brewing and making beer into distilling, but you sort of went the other way. One might have thought you would have gone into making brandy or something after being a winemaker, but tell me about that transition.
Yeah, that was actually my intent. When my youngest graduated from high school, I was at Brown County Winery, since we have that connection in southern Indiana, and when I moved to Kentucky to build a winery there, my intent was, I actually wiggled my way on the legislative committee so that I could get a still. At the time, you could not put a still in a winery, in a farm winery. And so I got myself nominated on a committee that was working towards getting stills so that you could make brandy, because I'm thinking if I'm building a winery in Marion County, Kentucky, where Maker's Mark is, I'm going to learn from the best here, right? And needless to say, I ended up working in the evenings with Steve Beam and at Limestone Branch, and that winery, the owners went through a very spectacular divorce, and they saw the writing on the wall, and I resigned, and Paul and Steve Beam took me to dinner and hired me 24 hours after I resigned the winery. So.
And
Yeah.
Chris also says to let you know that they're doing a Yellowstone flight tonight, too.
That's awesome.
And
All
Yellowstone,
family.
and Steve is here tonight, isn't he?
He is. I haven't seen him. I've heard rumor that he's around.
He's supposed to be here. If you see him, send him our
I
way.
heard, Steve Basher from Mount Vernon said that he's here.
Yeah.
He said he's passed through, so he's here somewhere.
And Dave Kuhn says you sort of took the Mark Rainier path of going from wine to whiskey.
Yeah, there's a few of us. Even in Kentucky, Brandon O'Daniel with Copper and Kings, he was a winemaker when I was a winemaker, and we made that transition really the same year. I think I did a little bit earlier than he did, going into distilling, but yeah.
Which is better? Which is more fun, whiskey or wine?
Distilling is much more fun because you get to do what you did with wine, like with all the fermentations and all that really great part, but you also get to do it every day. Winemaking was always about the season. You're waiting for the season and the harvest and everything, and then all of a sudden the grapes would get ripe. You'd make all these beautiful plans, and you just have to it would be crazy. And this way I can always tweak fermentations. I can always see if we've done a big run. what should be better, what should be different. The corn's getting some age on it. What do I need to readjust the next one? But I can do it like continuously, right? And turn that over. And distilling, you get to keep tinkering with it and do one more thing to that fermentation.
I want to have you move that microphone just a little closer to your mouth, just to make it's somewhat directional because of the wind. Okay. You're still working with the Mount Vernon folks, too, right?
I
you
am.
Steve
5.5 years. 5.5 years now. It seems it's just flying by. Yeah.
And it seems like it's about time to have another distilling run down there at the end of the season, right?
It is. It is. November. Yeah, I will be the end of October, and I haven't got blah, 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 blah. Steve hasn't said the dates exactly yet, so as soon as he hits those dates, then I'll... When do you
think, what are you going to make this time around, or do you know yet?
Rye Whiskey is my understanding, so I haven't heard that 100%, but I believe it's going to be rye. But.
Well, it is great to see you, and
you too, Mark.
Thank you for bringing this, although I got to be honest, I got a note from FedEx saying that your guys sent me a bottle of this,
too.
Okay. I wanted to be honest about it because they already sent one.
I appreciate that.
But I'll be glad to take care of both of them, so I wanted to be straight up with you about it.
I appreciate that.
But, hey, it's great to see you again, and thank
too,
you for showing up. And go down and tell Steve to get his butt up here.
I'll do that.
Because I got to kill some time here.
That means I'm going to have to pour. He doesn't have everybody else at the table. So
okay, so go swamp out with him then. And thank you once again, Lisa Wicker, our pal from Widow Jane Distillery. And we will see you later. And just go right, turn around. Don't forget your stuff there. Thank you, and we will switch back over to the other camera right now. Once again, we are on location at the American Whiskey Convention, and we will do this for maybe another half an hour or so. We've already gone, since we started late, we will go for another half an hour or so. I've got to thank my daughter, Brianna Gillespie, because she's working as my off-camera producer right now. She's the one who's going out and dragging people over here to come on camera and trying to make things interesting for me and sometimes surprising me with who shows up over here. So we will see who she's able to come up with next right now. Just wanted to let you know, coming up on the podcast this weekend, we'll be hearing from our pal Freddie No, who just came out with the 5th chapter of Little Book from Beam Suntory and the Jim Beam family. They just opened up the Fred B. No Craft Distillery the other day, named after Freddie's dad, Fred No, and Freddie is getting to use that as his playground, as his experimental project. And one of the things we asked him about was the look on his dad's face when he saw his name above the door for the first time. Don't have that on video. I'm going to make you wait for the podcast this week. That's a tease. You're going to have to listen on Sunday night, Monday morning, depending on where you are in the world. We'll have that up for you right now. We will also have the podcast version of this little event up midweek. And if you didn't catch, if you missed last week's webcast, that one is available right now, and we're making all of these available as podcast episodes that come out every Wednesday, the following Wednesday after the podcast, after the webcast. We want you to watch the webcasts, but we know that you can't always make it on Friday afternoons at 5 p.m. And so that's why we make them available as webcast. And we've got another guest coming in, one of our friends from Uncle Nearest. And Fawn's not here today. Our pal Fawn Weaver is not here, but let me get your name.
My name is Jen Fredericks.
Jen, you're the local ambassador for Uncle Nearest, right?
I'm the state manager.
Okay, for Pennsylvania. So you get to deal with all the fun control state stuff, right?
I love the PLCB. I do. I really do.
How hard was it getting a brand new whiskey brand into the PLCB?
For Uncle Nearest, because we're great whiskey, we have a great story. We're run by, obviously, an amazing woman. It wasn't hard.
And we refer to Fawn around here as Hurricane Fawn because she is a force of nature. I was in Tennessee just a few weeks ago and actually got to drive by the distillery.
You drove by it, but not in it?
Well, because it wasn't. I didn't control my agenda. We were visiting another distillery, sort of kind of near there.
Okay, next time.
Big place, but got to look at it.
Yeah.
And since you're not distilling yet, and Victoria wasn't around, I don't think, so I didn't get to stop by and hassle her. But,
usually on Saturdays you can catch Fawn or Victoria.
And that's really when it's open, is on the weekends to visitors, right?
Correct.
That really is going to be an interesting place. I know there was just a land acquisition to expand to the, I believe, to the west a little bit.
Yes, I believe we're going to be growing our own corn, our dent corn that we use in our whiskey.
Tell me what the reaction has been when you go out and talk about Uncle Nearest in the marketplace.
It's been extremely welcoming and positive. People are really intrigued by the story. The caveat of having a woman-owned brand also is very appealing and interesting to people. And the fact that, Fawn is African-American. It's the first female African-American major whiskey brand.
Matt Wooler is suggesting that I need a dram in my hand or at least the occasional sip to wet the whistle. Well, thanks to Lisa, I think we'll take care of that in just a minute here. But a couple of new whiskeys just came out from Uncle Nearest, primarily for the distillery.
At the distillery, yep. Our master blend.
When do we see the next, 1856 is the mainstream one. 1820 is the special one that
that's
Victoria
the single
selects.
barrel.
But that's the one Victoria picks, right? Or that's the 1885.
The master blend.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking the one
Victoria's.
that the family picks.
Yes, 84.
84, that's the one.
1884, and the master blend.
Right.
Yeah, 1820 is our single barrel. That one actually will be available this weekend at the distillery, 1 bottle per person.
New edition, and the last one I had was really good. So how did you get into the whiskey business?
So I worked for Southern Glaziers for 11 years, and
for people who aren't familiar, big distributor.
Yes.
One of the biggest in the country, if not the biggest.
Yep. And I worked on several whiskey portfolios. I had the Heaven Hill portfolio, which is an amazing bourbon whiskey portfolio. I had Bacardi, who has Angel's Envy, several different bourbon whiskeys, and I just really liked the whiskey culture.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
And there's a lot of great stories too, right?
The stories are, true or not, they're amazing stories.
Where do you hope to take this career?
So I manage 2 states, and I'd like to be a regional manager, VP of sales one day. I'm actually enrolled in E. Cornell's executive leadership program. I won a scholarship through Women of the Vine and Spirits.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And Discus actually picked me as one of the recipients. So, I'm one day headed that way.
For people who want to get into this business, coming out of college, say, and are looking at this, you don't have to do the distilling side. You can do the marketing and the sales side and have a very good career, right?
Absolutely. If I actually do mentor a couple girls right now from University of Delaware and St. Joe's here locally. And my advice to them is to start at a distributor if they do want to go into sales or finance, data. There's lots of options there. It's kind of the path that I took, and I loved everything I learned at the distributor. It's helped me today.
Yeah.
So.
Ever thought of trying to do because we have people go from being ambassadors and state managers, and they decide they want to actually make the stuff.
No.
No desire?
No desire.
No desire.
No desire.
I know that feeling.
I love sales.
Love sales. And
yep, I love people.
And I'm guessing probably didn't want to do all the chemistry and all that. I know that's that was my weak point.
It's just not very people-facing.
Yeah.
So I know where I flourish, and that's where I'm good.
Okay, let's just solve one problem here right now, guys, because everybody's asking about this barrel head and waiting to see it go. There's a steel stand behind there. It's not going to fall. The only way it falls is if the whole table goes, guys. So, Jen, thank you for joining us. Give my best to everybody at Uncle Nearest when you talk to Fawn and Lady V and everybody. And we will, I promise, I will stop at the distillery next time I'm down on that highway heading towards Lynchburg.
Okay, we look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
And let me take that microphone from you, and we will keep going here. And we had a comment from H. Hemphill. Hope you get to try some restaurants in Philly if you're feeling up to it. Tiramisu Ristorante is a great Roman Jewish restaurant with outdoor seating. Well, okay, I need to point out something. Basically, if you go straight, you can't see the bridge, the Ben Franklin Bridge that's off to my right over here. If you go basically this way, about 5 miles is where I live. So, yeah, I kind of get to Philly on a regular basis. And, great restaurants. There are good distilleries here in town, New Liberty, among others. Philadelphia Distilling that makes Blue Coat Gin and is laying down some whiskeys for the future. There are other great distilleries in the area. Manatawny still works, so we may pull Max Pfeffer over from Manatawny here in just a bit. There are plenty of good whiskey bars in the area. If you go just down the road, basically 95 Baltimore, Sagamore Spirits, about an hour and 20 minutes down the road. There are distilleries in Delaware. There are farm distilleries all over Pennsylvania. Bristol, just up the road, north of here, Dad's Hat Distillery. A lot of these places are open to the public and do offer tours, and really well worth the experience and well worth doing. And I am going to be honest here, I need something to drink. Actually, I need to do the right thing here. Let me set the microphone down for just a second. Thank you for the tolerating me getting a quick sip of water here. Come on in.
Yeah, absolutely. Mind if I take my mask off first?
Oh, by all means.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm going to make this real clear. You call me sir one more time, and we're going to have a problem.
Yes, sir.
Please don't call me sir. I hate that.
Absolutely.
We have not met. I'm sorry. Brianna Polgin, let me get your name and your distillery.
Absolutely. My name is Tone, and I work for New Liberty Distillery right here in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah, Robert Kasselsman. You just mentioned Robert, New Liberty.
Very cool.
And Robert is vacationing this week, and you guys make some really fun stuff.
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
And Tone, let me get you to move that microphone a little
Absolutely,
closer
sir.
to your face.
I apologize. I did it again.
So, tell us about New Liberty, because it's one of these distilleries that's in an old horse stable, an old carriage horse stable. Really beautiful. Really, literally only about 10 minutes from here, right?
Right. Easy for us to get here, thankfully. Absolutely. So, as you said, New Liberty, we are up in the old Crane Arts building. We're in the horse stable side of that whole operation. And I think our distillery is really interesting. You know, as you said, Robert's always kind of thinking of something new, coming out with something crazy. And it's fun because we do have always so much going on. We have that Kinsey line, Kinsey Whiskey, that classic Pennsylvania brand from 1892, right? It's been around for so long, and we're trying to bring it back, trying to remind people that whiskey really was founded here in its like early days in Pennsylvania, in Maryland. I know we all think Kentucky when we think whiskey, but really it got its start here. And with the Kinsey line, we're just kind of trying to remind people what those classic examples of Pennsylvania whiskey are. And then we do have that New Liberty line, those really fun grain-to-glass examples of just like fun whiskey. We have that Dutch malt, that Millstone Rye, that Bloody Butcher bourbon, these kind of fun, younger whiskeys that are maybe not your typical whiskey, not what you think bourbon is going to taste like, but still really, really good, and kind of showing everybody that maybe what we think about whiskey isn't always what's right about whiskey, but it's really fun, and all of these craft distillers are kind of finding themselves in a place where they can stay within the legal limits of what whiskey is while also kind of making these really new and really, really cool products. So let's talk about Millstone Rye. Yeah, absolutely. Because just posted tasting notes for that a 3 weeks ago, and it's a good little whiskey. It's absolutely. It's one of those whiskeys that really does sort of remind everybody that, yes, rye whiskey was dominant up along the East Coast from basically from Virginia all the way up through Pennsylvania into New York back before Prohibition. Right, yeah, especially the first settlers who got here, the first thing that really took to the harsh soils of here was rye. So, right, the grain that you have is what you're making your spirits out of at the end of your season when you're trying to save those through the winter. So rye has always dominated, and I think Millstone Rye is such a great example of that. That 100% rye that you're not typically finding. I think people kind of shy away from rye, from those big numbers in your mash bill of rye to try to get away from the spiciness of it, but I think Millstone Rye is such a great example of you can have this big rye mash bill, that 100% rye mash bill, and still have this really smooth, this really clean product. And I love that you brought up Millstone Rye. It is actually most of our favorites whiskey at the distillery. I know most of us in the distilling team do love Millstone Rye more than the rest. I think for everything we just talked about, it is that like this awesome example of some classic Pennsylvania whiskey, but it is so good to taste, and even with its young age statement of just a year, it has so much going on. You can like taste the soil it grew in, you can taste those rye grains in it, you can taste that oak that it ages in, and I think it's such a good example of like kind of the good whiskey that we make at New Liberty. Tell me how you got into the distilling business. What's your background? Absolutely. So I guess basically how I really got in, full stop, is I graduated college and I realized I didn't have a job. And I was living in D.C. at the time, but I bartended then for a few years. I kind of learned everything I knew about liquor and whiskeys from some really cool representatives who came in and taught us about it, and from just like working in bars and all of that. And then I moved to Pennsylvania, and I was again without a job, and so I started pre-shutdown and pre-COVID as a sales rep at New Liberty. When the world shut down, there's nobody to sell to, so I kind of moved into production, and now I work with the production and distilling team. So it's cool to kind of see both sides, to see how we sell it and then also how we make it. And so really, I think my goal is to kind of just try to learn like every nook and crevice of the distillery, know every fact there is. So I think it is so interesting to learn from somebody like Robert, who's always thinking of something new. He has such a good background in whiskey, such a background in so many parts of distilling, that it's really cool to learn from a guy who is always making sure that we are making things in the best way, not just the easiest way.
And the fun thing about Robert Cassell, the master distiller and the founder at New Liberty, is that he's one of the few people that actually is a master distiller in 2 different countries, because he's also the master distiller at Connacht Whiskey.
Absolutely.
In Connacht, Ireland.
Yep.
And they just released their first single malt.
Yes, they did, absolutely. And we actually got to try that. They sent us the mock-up bottle the other day, and we got to try it. But it is
and I have
always
tried
cool,
it as well.
Right? It's always cool. And that's the thing, is, right, Rob learned from some Scottish distillers, so we do a lot of Scottish distilling practices in what we do. He has some background in Irish whiskey, so we do some things like that. He was a beer maker for a long time, so we, in our fermenting process, kind of do some of the things he learned there. It is so cool to learn from a guy who has just had so much experience and really cares about every product that he puts out. Every bottle that we do, everything that we make, even if our sales team goes crazy because Rob keeps being like, nope, I won't release that yet, that needs to stay in a barrel, that needs to macerate longer. Like, he is always making sure that what we do bottle, he will stand behind, and I really, really appreciate that.
But the problem in Pennsylvania is that you can't sell the Connacht whiskey because it's not made there, right?
Exactly, right. So we do some, so we've done some, like, collaborations with them where they'll send us some juice and we can blend it with our own.
The Brothership, right?
The Brothership, right, we did that. We actually have something really cool, I think is really cool going on right now. We actually do have a Kinsey Scotch. And I'm sure, as we both know, Scotch must legally be made and distilled and barreled in Scotland to be considered Scotch.
As long as it's a single malt. Blends can be shipped over.
So as you just mentioned, though, we must bottle it here in the state to sell as a Pennsylvania product. So we work with the distillery in Scotland. They make the Scotch over there. They ship it to us over here. We proof it down, we blend it, and then we bottle it. So we have this like fun, like legal hula hooping.
They have to blend it with something because they can't ship it out unless it's bottled. They can't ship a single malt.
It's not single malt. It's a blended Scotch.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a blended Scotch.
It's a blended Scotch.
Yeah, it's not single malt. Definitely, right? Just like we do with our bourbon. I think every country kind of has their thing that they're proud of. That they're like, we don't want this to be changed, so we're keeping it kind of within ourselves, which I think totally makes sense.
Okay. Well, Tone, hey, thank you for coming by. I appreciate it. And
thank you so much.
Can't wait to get over to the distillery again.
Absolutely. Come by.
I have to. Well, Robert was bugging me to come over before Labor Day, before he headed out on vacation.
Yeah.
Because there's some stuff he wanted me to try. So we're going to have to wait till after he gets back. But I will see you when I get back
Absolutely.
there.
I'll definitely be there.
Great. Thank you, Tone.
so much.
And let me take that microphone from you.
There you go. Thank you so much.
And I see somebody in Revolutionary War gear off camera. Get in here, Steve. There's the microphone, and you can hold your own microphone.
Okay. Let me get a sip of water here.
Yeah, our pal Steve Bayshore from George Washington's Distillery at Mount Vernon. Lisa was here just a few minutes ago.
She very kindly decided, her and Becky Harris are holding down the fort for me. What an honor.
Good. Yeah, what an honor.
Yeah.
So how you been?
Been pretty good. Like all of us, it's been a tough time, but Mount Vernon has been able to reopen late last year. The estate being opened first outside areas last year. The house is now open again. The mill and distillery have been only open on weekends, but we're seeing visitation slowly come back, and we were productive last year on the production side, though, with no tours going on. We did make some brandy runs and our first heirloom grain whiskey run.
Interesting. Tell me about it.
Well, we've been wanting to do this for a while because we had been grinding grain at the mill that were heirloom varieties for an 18th century baker. Some of the white Lamasse wheat and pencil cob corn, early varieties. And we decided, let's go ahead and use this time of COVID when we can't have a lot of staff in the distillery to do a very small run as a pilot program. So we did an old rye, a Brutzi rye with pencil cob corn, and then Scots bare barley. And the bare barley is one of those old landrace grains that comes from Viking times across to Scotland on over. So it came out really well. It was very productive, and we laid back some 53s with that.
I know both Brookladdy and Highland Park have done some stuff with that over in Scotland with the beer barley that's traditionally been grown over there in the Orkney Islands.
In the Orkney Islands, that's right. So in line with what we do, as you know, Mark, it was just fit us to do something with the older grains.
So how is your bourbon coming along? Last time we talked was right around the time you had your first Mount Vernon Whiskey Festival a couple of years ago. How's it coming?
You know how it can go in the barrel that starts off tasting a little odd in the early years? Well, it's hit a nice spot at almost 3 years old. So, as always, we check it regularly. It'll be a little over 3 this December. And so I think we're looking at a 4-year-old release for some of that. But we want to hold a few of those barrels for 2026, which is the anniversary of the American Revolution, in which we'd have a 7-year-old bourbon. So I think that's the plan right now, but it's coming along very nicely.
Let's talk about rye whiskey. We were talking with Tone from New Liberty a few minutes ago, and we've talked about sort of this history of rye whiskey along the eastern seaboard. And that really was the dominant whiskey in the early days of America, right?
Yeah, it was, and of course we all know the long history of Pennsylvania rye, the Monongahela rye, which was, you could say, a brand that was known in the 18th century with that name. Maryland famous for its ryes. My research has led me to determine that I think the northern half of Virginia was paralleling on the rye front with those other states. You get into central southern Virginia, I found a lot of corn whiskey. So that band there, as you look at northern Virginia on up, was certainly rye. Even eastern shore of Maryland, eastern shore of Virginia. So, in fact, recently in research, we found that Washington got some rye from Maryland because he didn't have enough one year. So that connection, I think it's erase the state boundary lines and think of the farms.
Yeah.
The rye is all across that area.
Lisa mentioned that you're going to be distilling later next month, right?
We're going to...
Or in early November, rather?
Early November. We hope we can do a bigger run because we do need to do that.
Of regular rye?
Yeah, regular rye. And so we're looking forward to getting back in there. We probably aren't really ready for it physically because it's been a long time since we've set that much by hand.
Right.
And as you know, so I'm kind of getting psyched up to do it. I hope we can do it.
And you have to bring in a bunch of volunteers to do this again, right?
Well, you're always welcome. We do it with staff. It's all staff. You know, I get a lot of calls because everybody wants to come help us.
Yeah.
But we have to kind of, because of liability and...
the last time I was there was when you had all the master distillers from Kentucky around.
Oh, that was a huge...
That was fun.
A huge time. Yeah, we always look for those special moments when people in the industry can come and be with us because they love it. They like walking back in time. You know, John Campbell or Freud told me, he goes, it just reminds me of what Scotland was like at a time with those wood-fired stills.
That reminds me, you got some single malt maturing too, don't you?
We sold all of that, but I've talked to John recently. I just, bug him every so often because we want to get him and Bill Lumsden back. We did a batch with them some years ago, so that's certainly a desire for us to do that.
And the real drawback for whiskey lovers is that they have to come, they can only get it at Mount Vernon with the way your liquor license is set up, right?
That's right. And Virginia being a control state, and we are now in 12 ABC stores across central Virginia. From Williamsburg to Richmond to Charlottesville, we didn't want to compete with our own store. But if you walk into an ABC store in Virginia and you're not at Mount Vernon hearing the whole story and seeing the building, what you see is a small bottle, $3.75. It's quite expensive compared to a Widow Jane or a Catoctin where you can buy a $7.50. So that's one of the aspects that makes it tough for us sometimes in the market. But I know that ACSA and Discus are trying to work on direct to sale to customers, and hopefully one of these days, for all the smaller distilleries, there'd be some distribution that way.
Theoretically, then, at that point, you could sell it through the Mount Vernon website.
Yeah.
And our pal Chris down in Australia, he and Lil want to tour Mount Vernon's distillery next time they're over. When they come up next time, they couldn't make it this year for a bourbon festival, but when they're in D.C. next, they want to come say hi and see the place.
Yeah, we usually open April 1st, and if it's a normal year, we'll be open April through October, because it's a seasonal site, as you know.
Right.
The mill gets quite cold come late November, so it's not the best tour time, but we'd love to have them.
Has this been, this is, I think, close to, you've just celebrated, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago, the 10th anniversary of the distillery. 2017. So next year will be 15th anniversary.
Yeah.
Has it been everything you thought it would be when you started out there?
It's been more, Mark. I was surprised because I come at this from a traditional milling background, running water mills, and I certainly liked whiskey and understood some elements of whiskey, but I never knew my role there would grow and get to meet people, like you, who know so many people in the industry and work with people like Dave Pickrell and Lisa Wicker.
Yeah.
It's kind of, sometimes you pinch yourself and look back and go, how did all this happen? Been very fortunate, actually.
And Chris is being my intermediary with Steve Beam, who is downstairs on the second floor. We're up on the top floor on the fourth floor outside. So if you want to pass that along to him, Chris, I appreciate it. I can't believe we're sending messages 2 floors down via Australia back to Chris, from Chris in Australia back.
Well, there's the Beams. You can talk to Steve about this family in Maryland in the Rye, because we were talking earlier about that story before they came to Kentucky.
Well, when we get him up here, we'll ask him about that. Will there be a Mount Vernon Whiskey Festival this year?
Not this year, but we're hoping next year. We really want to do it. As you know, these big events, we'd hope to have, something like that. It just didn't pan out. And we're also hoping to do in future a food and spirits event, which would open it up beyond whiskeys and have some chefs there. So, because the food movement's so big and people want to know what they're eating. So we're looking to do something like that with Foodways as well.
Sounds good. Steve, thank you for joining us. Let me turn your microphone down, and I appreciate the time as always. It's good to see you, my friend.
See you.
Safe travels, and we'll talk again soon.
Very good, Mark. Thanks.
Okay. Once again, that's Steve Bayshore, Mount Vernon, and George Washington's Distillery. Flip the camera back over here. Thank you again, Steve. And I'm assuming that Steve Beam is on his way up right now, or Brianna's dragging somebody up here, probably against their will. But I do want to thank our remote producer all the way down in Brisbane, Australia, Chris Tatsenko, for sort of being an intermediary for us. And since Chris is celebrating his 50th birthday in the next few hours, depending on the time difference, normally I would never do this, but since I have a few minutes to kill, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear Chris, happy birthday to you. And that is the last time you will ever hear me sing in public again. So, once again, we're at the American Whiskey Convention at the Independence Seaport Museum here in Philadelphia. If you're in the area, I believe it's too late to get tickets now. The event is going on through 9:30 tonight, but there will be another one next spring, usually held in early April, and I believe it will probably, though I don't have confirmation on this, it'll be back here at the museum again next April. So check the AmericanWhiskeyConvention.com website for more information. And with that, I mean, we have been very lucky to have everything last as long as it has. Bill Ricker, I'm glad his wife isn't a critic. Nurse Dave. And Lil is laughing it up in the background because it's her birthday on Monday, and I'm not singing again, Lil. I'm sorry about that. Just a few other comments here. Nurse Dave, to be clear, I'm fine if you all want to address me as sir. No, Dave, we're not addressing you as sir. We're lucky. You're lucky we address you. Matt Waller, what makes it a convention versus a show or expo? Well, there's learning things here, too. Some education, master classes, and it's not just about pouring whiskeys. There are farmers here showing off grains. There are still makers that have been here in previous years, and it really is a chance to do more education. And Brianna, come here. Time for the kid. You're allowed to take your mask off now, Bree. We're trying to kill a couple minutes while Steve Beam comes up here.
Okay.
And this is Brianna. Last time you saw her, she was cutting my hair during the worst of the pandemic. And as Bill points out, Lil can use YouTube's replay function, and we'll pretend we sang happy birthday to Lil, too. Trust me, you really don't want to know, Bree.
Okay.
So, you have been basically running around here. What have you seen other than just trying to drag people up here?
About 43 flights of steps.
Yeah.
But no, I've seen quite a few different distilleries, a lot of new craft distilleries that I've not seen. There are a lot that are local to PA in particular. Being in Philadelphia, that makes sense. But what's really interesting is actually seeing this many people in a venue for the first time in about 18 months.
Yeah, and you've been running around fully masked, and I'm only not wearing mask because I'm out here, but my mask is right here for when I do go back inside. And
masks are required throughout the venue. The only reason why we're allowed to not have them on is because we're doing live interviews, and we're socially distanced, but we're also vaccinated.
And because basically there's nobody within 50 feet of us in direct contact. So
did Steve tell you how it came to be that he got to be up here?
Lisa and Becky just took over his booth pouring for him so that he could come up.
And I have pictures and proof. So womening the booth for him so that he can handle. Women get stuff done in whiskey.
Okay, I am going to give you one final task before we close it down. I need you to go to the Wild Turkey booth and get Bruce Russell.
Oh, goodness gracious. I will try. It is mob downstairs.
I know, but I need
right
you
at the beginning, but I'll
tell
do my
Bruce
best.
that we're live up here, and I need you to get him up here.
Okay, I'll see if I can grab Bruce.
Thank you, Bree.
This is why I wear flats to these things.
This is why I turned off her mic before she could start putting in anything smart-assed. See, I've done this before. I'm going to make one... Well, actually, let's just go back to this camera, because the camera one is kind of overexposed right now just because of the... it was picking up too much of the studio lighting in here, so I'll just address this camera for a bit. Just to give you sort of the lay of the land here, the river is obviously right down here, but there's it's not quite a boardwalk. It is the Penn's Landing area along here with a bunch of concession stands and boat docks and things like that. That is Camden, New Jersey across the way. The Adventure Aquarium in the distance. The Outdoor Entertainment Center, the BB&T Pavilion. If you're a basketball fan, you may see the 76ers logo there just basically right, well, I think the barrel might be blocking it slightly, but over there is where the Philadelphia 76ers have their practice facility. And as Brianna points out, this is why she wears flats. Yep, I wear flats too because I don't do good in kitten heels, I'm sorry. And everybody's appreciating Bree's support tonight because without her it wouldn't be possible. We're going to sort of wrap things up here. I'm going to give Bree a couple of minutes here. And once again, if you have any final comments or anything you'd like, and as Bree points out, she can still make smart-ass comments through the chat function. This is my family we're talking about. They can find a way to hassle me from anywhere via technology. I hope you have enjoyed this. We don't do these remote broadcasts very often. And in fact, this is the first one we've done since we were out at Sagamore Spirit last November for the release of the Penny's Proof Whiskies, and did the webcast from there on Friday night and a separate webcast on Saturday morning. If you like these and enjoy them, let us know about it, because we will, as things open up, consider doing some more of these. Bill Ricker is asking, can I tap dance? No. Not happening. But I do want to get you to, if you can, just click that like button and tell your friends, and catch the podcast version when it comes out. If you're joining us late, we will have the podcast version out on Wednesday. And I'm going to be honest with you, my throat is starting to fade. So I think we're going to call it a night from here, unless somebody shows up. I'm going to give Bree 2 minutes, and we'll see if Bruce Russell comes up or if Steve Beam gets up here. And if that doesn't happen, then we will go ahead and call it a night. I do want to talk just sort of briefly. It seems kind of odd almost to be having fun this evening, knowing that tomorrow is the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks in New York City, Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, and Western Pennsylvania. And there was a part of me that I, at the start, thought that maybe we shouldn't really be doing whiskey festivals and celebrations. There are a bunch around this weekend. And I thought about it, and then I'm going, no, it has been 20 years.
yes, it's sort of a milestone anniversary, but given the fact that we have come out of at least the first 3 waves or 4 waves of the COVID pandemic, I'm inclined to say let's go ahead and have the fun that we can have and celebrate this. But remembering, as I look over in the distance and I can see flags all over this area, I can count probably at least 3 or 4 that I can see just in this area right now at half staff. That we remember all of those we lost 20 years ago tomorrow. And we still hold the families of the 9/11 victims in our hearts, as we do the families of the hundreds of thousands of people worldwide who have died from COVID over the last 18 months to 2 years. And it's one of those cases where I wish I had the words to describe the way I feel right now, and I really don't. I'm hoping that some of you have some thoughts that you'd like to share as well. But it is one of those things that I still have a hard time whenever I go into New York City. That first view you get going up the New Jersey Turnpike when you see Manhattan, and the first few years I lived here, going there and seeing the Twin Towers, and then all of a sudden going up there and not seeing them for so long, and then going in on September, that first few days in September, they would do the Towers of Light with the twin searchlight beams where the towers were. And now the One World Trade Center tower that has opened in the last few years to replace it. Time does move on. We remember those we lost, and we honor their memories, and we do move on. We also honor the memories of those lost in Afghanistan and the various wars around the last 20 years that stemmed from the 9/11 attacks. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night from here. We will be recording some more interviews for the podcast this weekend. And I want to thank all of our guests, and I especially want to thank Brianna for running around and dragging everybody in and helping make this all possible. I don't say it often enough, but without the entire family, these podcasts and the Whiskey Cast and the webcasts and the podcasts would not be possible. And I owe it to my entire family for allowing me to have the best job in the world talking to you guys about whiskey.
That's our happy hour live webcast on location at the American Whiskey Convention in Philadelphia last Friday night. Thanks to Laura Fields and her team of volunteers for their help. We also want to thank the staff of the Independence Seaport Museum, where the event was held. Please join us for our live webcasts every Friday. We start at 5 p.m. New York time on the Whiskey Cast YouTube channel, our Facebook page, Twitter, and Twitch. And don't forget to listen to our regular weekly episodes of Whiskey Cast wherever you get your podcasts. This week, Wild Turkey's Bruce Russell and Jim Beam's Freddie No are my guests on the podcast as they get more and more involved in the generational transitions at their distilleries. Thanks to Dewar's and Redbreast, our presenting sponsors of Whiskey Cast, along with Sagamore Spirit, Writer's Tears, and Oban, our segment sponsors each week on the podcast. Whiskey Cast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2021, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening, and please stay safe.